Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining our nightly news program live from Algiers. I'm your host, Karim Fazakri, bringing you the latest updates from around the world. Let's dive into tonight's top stories. Algerian and Iranian foreign ministers discuss enhanced cooperation in Tehran meeting. Also coming up, tensions continue to escalate in Sudan as army strikes claim lives and causes medical system collapse. Also ahead, protests against police violence erupt in Paris despite the ban demanding justice for slain teen, and UN committee urges France to address racial profiling and use of force. In our news as well, U.S. announces provision of cluster munitions to Ukraine, raising concerns and global backlash. And Arab sports games in Algeria witnesses records being shattered, athletes qualified, and a step towards Arab reunification. Hello again and welcome to the details. First off in our news, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune engaged in a phone call with Portuguese President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa on Saturday. According to the Algerian presidency, President Tebboune received reassurances about President de Sousa's well-being during the call after he had suffered from a health problem. For his part, President de Sousa thanked his counterpart President Tebboune for this kind gesture and goodwill and the genuine concern shown towards his health. Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Ahmed Attaf visited Tehran in response to an invitation from his Iranian counterpart Hossein Amir Abdullahian. During their bilateral talks, both ministers expressed strong desire to enhance cooperation between the two nations. This significant diplomatic engagement underscores the commitment of Algeria and Iran to foster closer ties and explore new avenues of cooperation. Zara Farjani has the entire story.
Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf is in Tehran to enhance cooperation and partnership between Algeria and Iran, as directed by their leaders, Presidents Tebboune and Raisi. Minister Attaf and his Iranian counterpart Hossein Amir Abdullahian agreed to prepare for the third session of the Higher Joint Committee and activate mechanisms for bilateral cooperation, aiming to strengthen their relationship.
We agreed today to start the necessary preparations for holding the third session of the Higher Joint Committee, in addition to activating other mechanisms of bilateral cooperation, such as the Follow-up Committee and the Political Consultation Committee, as well as the various technical and sectoral committees.
The talks yielded positive outcomes, focusing on bolstering bilateral relations and finding common grounds on regional and international issues.
On the international and regional levels, we have dealt with the current crisis in international relations due to the war in Ukraine, issues of decolonization, especially in Palestine and Western Sahara, in addition to the crises that afflict the security and stability of Yemen, Libya and Sudan, and other challenges in our regional spaces. There was a consensus on these issues in our discussion today.
Algeria and Tehran are committed to coordinating within multilateral spaces to contribute to international peace and security.
We stressed the continuation and strengthening of coordination between the two brotherly countries in various international organizations of common affiliation, such as the United Nations, the Movement of Non-Aligned Countries, and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, in order to provide qualitative contributions that raise the performance of these organizations in maintaining peace and international security, promoting balanced international relations, promoting coexistence in the context of mutual respect, and rejecting violence and extremism.
The visit by Minister Attaf holds great significance in the context of strengthening the ties between Algiers and Tehran. Both nations share a common vision to expand economic and trade cooperation, making this visit an important milestone in their bilateral relations.
To another story now, the Supreme National Emergency Committee for the Palestinian Prisoners Movement and Detention Centers, praised the interest and support that Algeria provides to the Palestinian cause, especially to the citizens of Jenin. The Palestinian Committee, in a letter, praised the relations between the two countries, pointing to the historical and Arab ties between the Algerian and Palestinian revolutions. In a related matter, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres stands firm in his condemnation of the actions of the Zionist entity during its aggression in Jenin and its camp. Farhan Haq, the deputy spokesperson for the United Nations, affirmed Guterres' unwavering position, emphasizing the condemnation of the Zionist occupation for its excessive use of force in the West Bank refugee camp. Guterres criticized the entity for obstructing access to medical care for the wounded and impeding the efforts of humanitarian workers to reach those in need.
All acts of violence against civilians, including acts of terror. Israel's airstrikes and ground operations in a crowded refugee camp were the worst violence in the West Bank in many years, with a significant impact on civilians, including more than 100 injured and thousands forced to flee. Schools and hospitals were damaged, water and electricity networks were disrupted, and people in need were prevented from accessing essential care and relief. All those injured must have access to medical care, and humanitarian workers must be able to reach everyone in need. I once again call on Israel to abide by its obligations under international law, including the duty to exercise restraint and use only proportional force, and the duty to minimize damage and injury and respect and preserve human life.
In a powerful display of solidarity, numerous activists gathered outside the parliament headquarters in Rabat, the capital of Morocco, to denounce the expansion of the Makhzen regime and its growing ties with the Zionist entity. Organized by the National Action Group for Palestine and the Moroccan Initiative for Support and Victory, the popular vigil resonated with chants condemning the Zionist occupation's crimes in Jenin and rejecting any form of normalization. The demonstrators expressed their unwavering support for the Palestinian cause, making their voices heard against injustice and advocating for solidarity.
هذا العدوان من هذه الحكومة الصهيونية المودية الإسرائيلية.
This aggression from this Israeli Zionist government is destroying and smashing all the constants of the Palestinian cause. Unfortunately, in parallel with the normalization rush with the normalization capitals, it's the official Arab normalization that encourages the Zionist entity to commit these excessive crimes.
Also in our topical news, Emma Petteri, Speaker of the Parliament of Emilia-Romagna in Italy, delivered a speech in Bologna during the second seminar between Italian cities and the states of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, aka Sadr. She urged the international community to prioritize the implementation of international legitimacy in Western Sahara and actively seek a resolution to the Sahrawi cause. Petteri emphasized the importance of promoting self-determination and urged serious action in this regard. Tensions persist between rival factions in Sudan, leading to ongoing conflicts in various regions. Recent air and artillery strike by the army have resulted in the loss of 22 lives and caused the collapse of the country's medical system. Healthcare personnel are now deeply concerned about the dire situation and the challenges it poses to delivering essential care. Salman Asib has the full story.
As the 12th week of the war between Sudan's military factions unfolds, the paramilitary rapid support forces have swiftly taken control of Khartoum, Omdurman and Bahri. On Sunday, air and artillery strikes by the Sudanese army targeted western Omdurman, resulting in a reported death toll of at least 22 people, according to the Khartoum State Ministry. This sustained conflict has led to the collapse of the medical system in the greater capital area, compounded by insufficient medical staff due to disrupted public transportation caused by ongoing armed clashes.
We are currently experiencing significant difficulties with personal deployment as many of our staff are finding it difficult to commute between their homes and the workplace these days, especially when conflicts escalate and there are even fewer who can make it to work. Some live quite far away from the hospital and they have no choice but to walk home. This is really challenging to us.
The International Committee of the Red Cross reports that 18 hospitals have been bombed, while 21 others have been occupied by armed forces across the region. Only 20% of medical institutions remain operational, relying heavily on their own generators, as the city experiences limited power and water supply for a few hours each day.
The situation at the hospital remains dire as the supply of nearly all medications is running dangerously low, with some only available for 5 to 6 patients at most. The hospital must be forced to shut down, I am afraid.
It's crucial to note that the ongoing conflict in Sudan has claimed the lives of at least 1,133 people, according to the Federal Health Ministry. The impact is particularly felt in the capital and the Kordofan and Darfur regions. Many Sudanese individuals continue to flee to South Sudan in search of safety and stability.
Still with African news, the United Nations Support Mission in Libya has expressed its approval of the Presidential Council's decision to establish a Supreme Committee for Financial Oversight. This committee aims to address concerns regarding transparency in public fund spending and the equitable distribution of resources. In a statement on Facebook, the mission highlighted the comprehensive nature of this approach, which is expected to foster equal opportunities for all candidates in the upcoming elections. In a devastating double terrorist attack, 3 civilians lost their lives and 11 others were injured in Mali's northern region. The attack specifically targeted a logistical convoy of the United Nations mission, MINUSMA. The UN mission confirmed that 2 of the injured individuals were safely evacuated by their rescue unit. Although the Blue Helmet personnel valiantly responded to the attacks, no casualties were reported among the assailants who managed to escape the scene. Despite a ban, hundreds of demonstrators took to the streets of central Paris on Saturday to protest against police violence following last week's riots ignited by the killing of a teenager in Parisian suburb. Police intervened to disperse the crowd gathered at Place de la République, redirecting them towards Boulevard de Magenta, where they continued to march peacefully. The riots erupted after the fatal shooting of 17-year-old Nail by a police officer during a traffic stop on June 27th. The officer is currently under investigation for voluntary homicide, with his lawyer maintaining that the shooting was unintentional.
France is our country. We have to fight for this country, for its continued freedom. We have to fight because the death penalty had been abolished.
In related context, the UN Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination has adopted a statement addressing concerns and issuing recommendations to France regarding racial profiling and excessive use of force by law enforcement. The CERD specifically urges France to conduct a prompt, thorough and impartial investigation into the death of Nail, prosecute the alleged perpetrators and impose appropriate sanctions if they are convicted. These actions are crucial to uphold justice and address the gravity of the crime.
Deeply concerned by the continuing practice of racial profiling combined with the excessive use of force by law enforcement officials. In particular, the police against members of minority groups, particularly people of African and Arab descent, which frequently results in disproportionately recurring killings with near impunity, calls upon France to fully respect its international obligations, in particular those arising from the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, to which it is a party.
To other significant development now, the approaching deadline for the Black Sea grain deal has global implications for food security, with Russia and Ukraine at the forefront as top exporters. Turkey mediates negotiations while the UN prioritizes extending the deal to uphold global trade. Usama Ayadi reports.
With the looming deadline for the Black Sea grain deal, global attention is focused on the vital role played by Russia and Ukraine, the world's largest grain and fertilizer exporters. The deal, set to expire on July 17, has significant implications for global food security.
The Secretary General notes the indispensable role food and fertilizer exports from the Russian Federation and Ukraine continue to play in support of global food security. He reiterates the importance of full and continued implementation of the agreements signed in Istanbul in July 2022 to help ensure that these products can reach global markets smoothly, efficiently, and at scale. The
United Nations Secretary General's spokesperson Farhan Haq acknowledged the importance of these deals, which enable the safe export of food and fertilizer from Ukrainian ports and facilitate Russia's own exports, describing them as indispensable for global food security.
These agreements are an all too rare demonstration of what the world can do when it puts its mind to the great challenges of our time. Together, the agreements are contributing to sustained reductions in global food prices, which are now more than 23% below the record highs reached in March last year.
Turkey is actively engaged in mediating negotiations between Russian and Ukrainian officials to expand the grain deal. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan recently met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Istanbul to discuss the ongoing conflict and the deal brokered by Turkey and the United Nations. This agreement allows Ukraine to export grain and other agricultural products from its Black Sea ports.
I hope that the period of the initiative, which has delivered nearly 33 million tons of grain to people in need so far, like a breath from the Turkish Straits to the world, will be extended again on July 17th.
The UN has expressed its commitment to making every effort to ensure the extension of the Black Sea grain deal and a memorandum of understanding that facilitates Russia's access to global market for fertilizers and other products.
The United Nations remains committed to making every effort for the continuation of the agreements. They remain our main concern, and we hope that we can ensure their extension.
While closely monitoring the meeting between the Turkish and Ukrainian leaders, the Kremlin emphasized that no final decision has been made regarding Russia's participation in renewing the Black Sea grain deal.
In preparation for the upcoming NATO summit, Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania, has transformed into a fortified stronghold with advanced weaponry. The heightened security measures are aimed at safeguarding U.S. President Joe Biden and other alliance leaders gathering just 32 kilometers away from Lithuania's border fence, adorned with razor wire that separates the country from its Russian ally, Belarus. To strengthen border security during the summer, Lithuania has tripled its deployment of border guards with additional support from officers from Latvia and Poland.
This situation is really very tense because of aggression of Russian Federation against Ukraine. So it's already on a very, very high level, and definitely these threats of Lukashenko's regime to use the nuclear weapons against the whole world really creates a lot of, I would say, concerns. And this is why we're talking about very strong additional security measures. And what you mentioned and asked about the presence of our allies is one of those very important things.
Still in the same context, amid growing concerns about the presence of Wagner Group fighters in Belarus, the Polish defense minister announced the deployment of over 1,000 troops to the eastern region of the country. This proactive measure aims to address rising tensions and ensure the security of Poland's border as a NATO member. The United States revealed on Friday its plan to provide Ukraine with cluster munitions, a type of weapon banned by over 100 countries, as part of an $800 million security package. Ukraine anticipates that this action will have a significant psychological impact on Russian forces, while international organizations warn of severe repercussions resulting from this decision. Here's Sofian Kenturi with more.
Cluster bombs, one of the deadliest weapons globally, and banned by 123 countries under 2008 treaty, have been sent by Washington to Kiev in 42nd package of military aid since the start of the war in Ukraine. U.S. National Security Advisor Jack Sullivan justified this decision by claiming it would deter Russian advances.
Russia's been using cluster munitions with high dud or failure rates of between 30 and 40%. In this environment, Ukraine has been requesting cluster munitions in order to defend its own sovereign territory. The cluster munitions that we would provide have dud rates far below what Russia is providing, not higher than 2.5%.
International organizations and officials warned of the danger of transporting this type of ammunition to Ukraine due to its serious repercussions.
The Secretary General supports the Convention on Cluster Munitions, which, as you know, was adopted 15 years ago. And he wants countries to abide by the terms of that convention.
Well, the UK is signatory to a convention which prohibits the production or use of cluster munitions and discourages their use. We will continue to do our part to support Ukraine against Russia's illegal and unprovoked invasion.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov welcomed the supply of cluster bombs, stating that they would aid in liberating Ukrainian territory, but assured that they would not be used in Russia.
Ukraine will use these munitions only for the deoccupation of our internationally recognized territories. These munitions will not be used on the officially recognized territory of Russia.
The timing of this decision is significant as it comes ahead of the NATO summit in Lithuania. President Joe Biden is expected to face questioning from alliance members regarding why the US would send a weapon that the majority of NATO countries have banned due to its history of causing civilian casualties.
And in other news, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen embarked on a visit to China, aiming to mend the strained ties between the two countries. During her visit, Yellen met with Chinese economists in Beijing on Saturday, emphasizing the importance of close communication and exchanging views on tackling the various challenges ahead. The discussions mark a significant step in fostering dialogue and understanding between the United States and China. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, alongside senior officials and lawmakers, gathered with Aki, the widow of deceased Shinzo Abe, on Saturday to commemorate the one-year anniversary of Abe's tragic death. During the gathering, Kishida pledged to uphold the legacy and vision of Shinzo Abe. The private memorial service held at a Buddhist temple in Tokyo honored the former prime minister who was killed during an election speech, by an individual angered by his connections to the Unification Church. And finally in our news, the 15th edition of the Arab Sports Games in Algeria is witnessing breaking of several local and Arab records, as well as qualification of many athletes to come in international competitions. Through this tournament, Algeria proves once more its excellence in organizing major sporting events. This competition edition is considered a new step to achieve the endeavor of Arab reunification by reviving the activities of the Arab Olympiad after an absence that lasted more than a decade.
We know Algeria and the Arab national sense it possesses, and this is evident in its support of the Palestinian cause and its support to us in the earthquake disaster, confirms that Algeria has always tried to unite the Arabs with all endeavors and efforts.
Algeria has always been an incubator of all Arabs, including Palestine. And this is not new for Algeria, of course. The Arab Championship has its own characteristics, as it includes and brings together all Arabs on the Algerian soil. And this is a very important thing.
The end of our nightly news program. For more updates and stories from around the world, our social media platforms are under your service. Stay informed, stay curious, and join us again tomorrow for more news and insights. Good night.